Hola a todos y bienvenidos a Coffee Break con Punt de Vista. En esta serie de entrevistas mensuales queremos café en mano, charlar con científicos de prestigio internacional para que nos cuenten el estado de sus investigaciones en el campo de la recuperación de la visión. De esta forma queremos acercar a la ciencia a la sociedad y a la vez a la sociedad a la ciencia. Hoy tenemos el placer de inaugurar esta serie de entrevistas por todo lo alto, compartiendo el café con el doctor S.Schuman. El doctor Schuman no es solo un oftalmólogo e investigador de vanguardia mundial. La persona con la que charlaremos hoy es, sin lugar a dudas, un inventor. Él fue, por supuesto, trabajando en equipo como todo lo que se hace en ciencia, el inventor de la tecnología OCT, siglas en inglés de tomografía óptica coherente, que ha cambiado drásticamente la manera que tenemos de diagnosticar problemas de la retina, del nervio óptico y de otras partes del fondo del ojo. El mundo cuenta hoy con más de 60.000 máquinas OCT en consultas oftalmológicas de todo el mundo. En nuestro país, sin miedo a equivocarnos, podemos afirmar que muchísimas personas cuyo fondo de ojo ha sido revisado recientemente han sido escaneadas por esta máquina que inventó nuestro invitado de hoy allá por 1991. Por ejemplo, yo mismo. El doctor Schuman es un oftalmólogo americano que ha desarrollado su carrera profesional a caballo de New York, Boston y Pittsburgh, en el noreste de los Estados Unidos de América. Además de desarrollar la tecnología OCT, también ha hecho numerosas contribuciones al estudio del glaucoma, asuntos sobre los que le preguntaremos en nuestra entrevista de hoy. Por todo ello, ha recibido numerosísimos premios y condecoraciones. La lista es larguísima. Pero por destacar los más importantes, diremos que le fue concedido el Champalimaud Award, premio consistente en 1 millón de euros, ahí es poco, y también fue nominado al America's Top Doctor. Para acabar, el doctor Schuman es también el próximo director de la Fundación Arvo, entidad que agrupa a todos los investigadores del sector y con la que estamos asociados en el proyecto del Point of View Award, premio en el que nos ayudarán con la valoración de las candidaturas. Por todo ello, es un placer y un honor compartir nuestro primer coffee break con él. Hello, Dr. Schuman. Can you hear me? You're muted. There you are. So, hello, Dr. Schuman, and welcome to our first coffee break. So, first of all, I hope you brought the coffee with you.
Yes.
There you are.
Thank you.
Cheers. So, first of all, how's everything and how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. Thanks for having this coffee break with me.
Yeah, we're very, very happy to have you here. So when I was introducing you moments ago, I let our audience know that you will be the incoming chair of the Arvo Foundation. We have talked a lot about Arvo to our community due to the Point of View Award that we are launching together with your support. And for that, let me say on the record that we are very thankful for the support you've given us on this important project for us. But talking about you, can you tell us a bit more about this position and moreover, like what is the Arvo Foundation?
Yes. So thank you again on behalf of Arvo and the Arvo Foundation for your support. The Arvo Foundation is an organization that provides support for the mission of Arvo, which is to create and disseminate new knowledge in eye and vision research, and to educate the next generation of eye and vision researchers. We're focused not only on the collection, collaboration, and dissemination of knowledge, but also on educating the younger upcoming researchers who are just getting started. And we're very much focused on that aspect of eye and vision research. So ensuring that future generations carry the torch and are able to become as interested and excited and involved in developing eye and vision research as those of us who have been doing this for a long, long time, like myself. So it is a fascinating and wonderful field, and an area where we feel so much work. While so much work has been done and wonderful work, so much more is necessary. And Arvo is able to collect talent together from around the world to form these collaborative research groups, as well as individuals who are presenting research from their own laboratories. It's an international eye and vision research organization.
Yeah, I really think that these international institutions are like very important to like organize all the national research teams that are enrolled to universities or academical institutions, to hospitals, etc. Which is all under a kind of national point of view and national funding, etc. So I really think that these institutions are like really important to organize and to bring together all the researchers. You didn't say it, but actually Arvo organizes one of the most important, if not the most important, congress on the sector. So that's another point.
Right. As a global organization, we have an annual meeting that includes people from throughout the world. And there are several other meetings that are more regional in nature that Arvo organizes as well. And so there's a lot of activity throughout the year, but as you mentioned, the largest and most important meeting that Arvo holds is its annual meeting, which is usually in late April, early May.
Yeah. And so congratulations for being the upcoming chair of this institution. Like it's very nice to have you here, and congratulations. So let's switching topic a little bit to your own work and research and contributions. You are internationally known by being part of the team who invented the optical coherence tomography technology 30 years ago. And this technology provides a highly detailed 3D map of the eye, and it's a story of success because today OCT machines are used all over the world. Let me explain like plainly what is the OCT for the audience, and correct me when I finish, because of course some things you say much better than me. But to keep it simple, the output of an OCT screening is very similar to the one a regular tomography, like the ones that are used like for many other medical problems, either on the brain or for when there's a bone injury that an X-ray is not very clear. Like tomographies are used for many medical issues. And however, instead of building a 3D map by irradiating the region of interest, which is one of the problems of tomography in general, it is done using light, specifically a form of light called coherent light with some nice physical properties. So in this sense, it's kind of closer to an echography. But instead of using sound, we're using light and getting an output that is kind of a 3D map like the ones we get with what we call in Spanish tags, with tomographies. So the 3D map at the end, provided by an OCT, it's non-invasive at all. The result is got immediately, which that's very important, like the test is instant. And it's extremely detailed. Is my short description accurate? Like, can you lend it?
It's a wonderful description. It's just a way of creating an image of in this case of the eye, using light, and it's non-invasive and non-contact. There are algorithms that allow the machine to automatically delineate tissue planes. And we're able to create a three-dimensional map of the eye using this technology, as you said.
Yeah. So OCT have been here for 30 years now, so they are not really new. Like actually, like all hospitals in Spain with an ophthalmology department have one OCT, if not many. I would like to ask you, like, how was life before we had this technology for diagnosing retina-related diseases and stuff like that?
It was very subjective. So my motivation was to develop a way of objectively, quantitatively measuring the amount of neural tissue in the back of the eye. I'm a glaucoma specialist. And prior to the development of these imaging technologies, specifically OCT, but there have been others along the way. Prior to their development, an expert would look at the eye, they would look at the optic nerve, and they would judge whether or not the optic nerve appeared to be normal or abnormal. And they would make a judgment about how abnormal and in what areas the abnormality was. And that's still done. I mean, it's still part of clinical practice. But now we have tools that allow us to measure exactly how much tissue there is, what areas are outside the normal range, and make a more quantitative, less subjective judgment as far as whether or not a person is healthy, and further, whether or not that person is changing. So if we have somebody in whom we've made the diagnosis of glaucoma or some other disease, we can do OCT measurements over time to tell whether or not that person is getting better or worse. And that is critical in determining whether or not intervention is required. So do we need to advance treatment on this person or institute treatment, or are they stable and can they go along for a period of time? So there's so many ways that the practice of medicine has changed. And it's also flattened, it's flattened the earth because you don't have to be a super expert in order to make an expert evaluation.
Absolutely.
Technology helps.
There is an ophthalmologist who is a trustee in our foundation, and he's also a big counselor for this project. And he was, when we were preparing this interview yesterday, he told me that he had to tell his interns to learn how to do this diagnose also without the OCT.
Right.
Like they directly OCT people, and that's great. But he was saying hey, you also have to train yourself aside from trusting the technology. He was also telling us that OCTs are not only used for ocular problems, but are also used as a measurement for Alzheimer and Parkinson and other neurodegenerative diseases, because measuring how the degeneration of the neurons in the optic nerve is also a part of measuring how the progress of these kind of terrible diseases are happening. And actually, moreover, he told us that there is a colleague of him who is not an ophthalmologist. He works on things of the skin. I don't know the word for that in English, but he OCTs the skin of his patients to diagnose some very specific skin problems. So it's not only on the eye, it's for many, many more things. So I think we owe you an appreciation for creating this technology that definitely has critically improved the way we are diagnosing these things from a subjective approach, like you were saying, to something kind of more rigorous and scientific at the end of the day. I wanted to ask you also, how was the path to discovery? So before OCTs, how was the path to developing this technology?
Yeah, so I was fortunate to be part of a really excellent team of people who were involved in inventing this technology and then developing it. And that team really was led by Jim Fujimoto at MIT and included Jim and a number of other individuals, and Eric Swanson, David Huang, Carmen Pliafito, Charles Lin, in addition to myself. And what I can tell you from my perspective, OCT was being used. It's a way of measuring distances, as a way of measuring distances between planes of tissue. And so at the time, it was being applied as a single A scan, not as a tomographic technology, but rather as a single point in space to measure the thickness of the cornea for a new procedure that was being evaluated called laser refractive surgery. And so LASIK, it was in the and PRK, photorefractive keratoplasty were being investigated back in the late 80s. And so this technology, which was called optical coherence domain reflectometry, was being investigated to measure the thickness of the cornea, and it was failing because of a couple of reasons. One was that it took a long time to do the measurement, even though it was a single A scan. And the other was that you didn't really need it because you knew how much tissue you took off with every laser pulse.
Right.
I was a fellow, so I was still in training in the laboratory where this was being studied, looking at a different issue, not related to this project at all, but I had heard about it. And I realized that the wavelength was one where you could potentially measure the retina, not just the cornea, the front of the eye. And so I ended up going over from Mass Eye and Ear, where I was in training, to MIT to see if we could measure the retina. And David Huang and I and a couple of other people were there, and we cut some eyes in half and put them under the beam. These were calf eyes. And we went out to get some sodas because it took a long time to get a scan. We came back and in fact there was a signal, and that was the proof that we needed that we actually could get a signal from the retina, and then many years of hard work resulted in going from that half a calf eye scan to scanning in living beings and then finally in humans. So it was a somewhat arduous journey, but it was very productive. And any time that a technology is translated from the laboratory to clinical practice is very exciting. And for something to be as successful as OCT has turned out to be is incredibly gratifying as a as a researcher to see your efforts being useful and helping people around the world.
Yeah, of course. Like many times in science, this gets lost on the way to the clinical part, and OCT is definitely a story of success, and congratulations for that. Moving a bit on, your further research, as you said, has focused on glaucoma. So while I was doing some research for this interview, I came across some relevant statistics about the extent of this disease that myself, who I'm aware of glaucoma, I wasn't really aware of the severity of the disease. And I would like to share this data with you and just tell me your opinion. This data is from the ophthalmology chair of the University Hospital of Buenos Aires in Argentina. So it's a reliable source. And it says 8 things about glaucoma. First one is that glaucoma is the second most frequent cause of blindness in the world. And it's the first one that is irreversible, because the first one are cataracts, and cataracts can be solved by surgery. 68 million people are estimated to have glaucoma in the world, and 10% of people of them are blind. So that makes 7 million of glaucoma people being blind, which is the population of Catalonia, my region. So that's quite a figure. There are several millions more that have high intraocular pressure, but have not developed optic damage, or optic damage yet, maybe. Half of the population who suffers glaucoma does not know they have it, and it's symptomless in many cases until it is not symptomless and then it's very severe. In most cases, blindness can be prevented with an adequate control and treatment, and as I have experienced, there is a general lack of awareness of this very severe disease. Like, please tell us your thoughts about, as an expert on this data. It's
it's everything that you said is true, and it's frightening, isn't it? Because it's like having high blood pressure, where you have damage to your organs, but you don't know that it's occurring. And vision is a precious resource, and it is the sense that most people fear losing the most. In fact, studies show that people are more afraid of losing their vision than of dying.
Yeah.
And it is very frightening to think that you could have something going on in your body that's causing you to be losing your vision, but not know it until it's too late. So for most types of glaucoma, the loss of vision is asymptomatic, and you would never know that you have it until an eye specialist would tell you that, in fact, glaucoma is present. And so that's one of, actually, going back to the OCT issue, that's one of the potential benefits of a technology like OCT. And I'll come back to that in a second. There are types of glaucoma that do cause symptoms, something called acute angle closure glaucoma, and there are other types of glaucoma associated with inflammation and tumors and, rarer types of causes that may cause pain or decreased vision that you would notice. And those types of glaucoma are much easier for the patient to realize that they have because they are symptomatic.
Yeah.
So if you think about the problem of identifying a disease that has no symptoms, if you have a technology that is able to measure the presence of that disease and implement, let's say, an artificial intelligence algorithm, you could imagine that you could, if that technology were widespread enough, provide access to diagnosis to people who currently don't have that access easily enough. And I think that's one of the directions that things are heading in with diagnostic technology and OCT in particular, that you would be able to, say, go to the drugstore or to your primary care doctor and have a scan that, using artificial intelligence algorithms, would be able to say, oh, you have this problem or that problem. In this case, we're talking about glaucoma, that you have glaucoma, based on the measurements of that device that are detected by using artificial intelligence. So that sounds kind of science fiction-y, but in fact, I think that within the next, I'll make a prediction, let's say 2 to 3 years, that sort of technology would start to exist.
Yeah, and actually, like, medicine in general is moving towards a preventive medicine frame, because it's been shown to have like less effects on people, to be less money for countries, etc. So like all is moving towards this predictive based like medicine. So yeah, I agree that this is it's not that sci-fi as it sounds when you start to say it. And what are the current challenges that the scientific community is facing on fighting this disease?
There are so many, but the biggest challenge, I would say, is the fact that the damage due to glaucoma is irreversible. And so we can detect the disease, and we can detect it early as long as we have access to the population. And we can treat the disease, help to prevent further progression, but we can't turn back the clock yet. There's a very exciting article that just came out of Harvard Medical School that was published in Nature that suggests that it may be possible, using a cocktail similar to the Yamanaka factors that are used to create stem cells from mature adult cells, but leaving one out, one of those four factors, that it may be possible to turn back the clock inside living beings, and to restore the function of the cells in the retina, the retinal ganglion cells, and restore cells and vision. And so that would be phenomenal. It
That
obviously
would be a
would be
Nobel Prize, actually,
right, right.
probably.
And, right. And so, there's the one study. We need to see it replicated. We need to see it on a larger scale, and eventually we need to see it in humans. So this was done in mice. Um, but it's tremendous work. Many people are excited about it. I'm very excited about the potential. So this would address, the most difficult aspect of this disease, and perhaps it would work for other diseases as well.
Yeah.
Uh, and so that's things like macular degeneration and other types of retinal pathologies. But macular degeneration being one of the most common causes of blindness as well.
Yeah.
Um, the other kind of more out there sorts of approaches, things like whole eye transplant, for instance, are very exciting regenerative medicine possibilities. And that also sounds like science fiction when you first think about it, but then if you break it down into the component parts, the allograft, composite tissue allograft transplantation, the mechanical aspect, the immunological aspect, and then the neurological revitalization and connection with the brain aspect, the latter being obviously the most complex aspect of whole eye transplantation. This would address eye diseases in general. And so, um, it really is a possibility when you do break it down, even though it sounds like complete science fiction when you first think of whole eye transplant.
I'm so happy you're saying this because today we're talking about you and not about us, but this is part of our long-term goal actually as a foundation, as a
Yes.
project in general. The article you said, I have read about it on the news. I have it on my night table, not literally, but almost. And I definitely have to take a look at it because this ability of like reversing the clock on neurons, which are kind of the cells that of the body that probably we are less able to work on them. I think definitely would be a Nobel Prize if we could do something like that. And it's not only for the eyes, it's also for backbone injuries that led to like handicap, etc. Like many more problems are based on this tiny little problem of neurons not being able to reconnect in a functional, proper way. Okay, transcending your work as Joel Schuman, the researcher, and talking to you as Joel Schuman, the expert that of course you are and you're showing us, I would like to ask you some questions that we want to ask like all our participants in this series of interviews. The first one is, what is, in your opinion, the biggest advance the sector has seen in the last, let's say, couple of years? And what do you expect to be the next like big step forward in the following, let's say, 5?
So let's break that down maybe into laboratory and clinical. And so in the laboratory, what we just talked about actually, I think would be the most tremendous advance, and that would be the resetting the clock on retinal ganglion cells. That would be the tremendous. Again, it needs to be borne out, replicated, and expanded. I think that stem cell replacement of ocular tissue is a tremendous advance as well. So for glaucoma, I think it'll be a while before we see stem cell transplant for retinal ganglion cell rejuvenation or replacement. Although if the Yamanaka factor approach works, maybe that is not a necessary step. Um, on the other hand, stem cell transplant for trabecular meshwork may be a clinically viable approach. It's a less complex sort of replacement of malfunctioning cells with new cells, with stem cells. So I think that that's very exciting. And stem cell for corneal clearing. I think the work that was done by Jim Funderburg and by the folks at LV Prasad in India is very interesting. So these are regenerative medicine approaches to restoring ocular integrity and visual function. The work showing the connection between ocular and visual brain abnormalities, I think removes the sense of changes in the eye happening in a vacuum. The changes that you see are not just in the eye, they occur in the visual brain as well. And we need to have a more holistic approach, perhaps, to eye and vision function and disease. And then in terms of clinical approaches, I think that especially for macular degeneration and glaucoma, the use of medications that are injectable, that provide controlled release so that you're treating the patient over time, that you reduce the importance of adherence to treatment or the patient's role in treatment adherence. I think that those are very necessary and positive aspects. So being able to inject a drug that releases over a long period of time, 6 months, 12 months or longer, and then new surgeries that are less risky for disease, I think are really important advances.
Yeah, absolutely. As you know, you're bringing the next, you just brought it to my next question, that as you know, personally know, our foundation and specifically the Point of View Award we're launching together with ARVO aims at finding a solution to vision restorage beyond eye damage or injury. Yeah, we want to break this dependency of eye for vision, when actually vision is a cortical brain function where eye is a highly extreme sensitive but sensor at the end of the day. The big majority of cases, though, of vision loss are caused by an ocular malfunctioning and not by a brain malfunctioning. That sometimes happens, but it's not the majority. So in your opinion, what is the path that will lead us to finding a solution, even if it's in the long term, to this problem? Biotech, is it transplanting? Like, what do you think?
So I know both you and I have a bias towards biomedical engineering approaches. And I think it's a strong and a good bias. But we need to understand the system better. And we need to understand the language of how the brain interprets what the eye sees. And in order to, so right now, there are technologies that can give you phosphines that are just flashes of light if you stimulate the cells in the brain, or if you stimulate certain cells in the eye. And you can even get to a point where you're able to discriminate certain shapes using bioengineering approaches. So things like the Argus 2, which is the retinal implant, or the subretinal implants that are currently being used, which are wonderful in that they restore vision to people who are blind. But the type of vision is not a true visual percept. And yes, you can help to restore independence to people who otherwise would not have that visual independence, are unable to experience the visual world, but they're not able to experience a true visual percept.
Yeah.
And in order to get to that point of being able to have a true visual percept, I think that we need to understand the fundamentals of how we see what we see better. So there needs to be more work done on the basic science end of visual perception, and more work done on the technology end of brain-machine interface. And the current technologies, like the Argus and the other retinal implants, rely on an intact optic nerve, which is not the case in diseases like glaucoma. And so a brain-machine interface would be necessary for those sorts of diseases if we can't regenerate the optic nerve. And even the retinal implants need to be refined in order to produce a true visual percept. And so I think we have a lot of work to do. We've made a lot of progress, but we have a lot more work to do, both on the fundamental basic science aspects of vision, as well as on the engineering aspects of curing this problem.
Yep, absolutely. I have a final question that we want to finish with everyone with the same question. So with this interview, we do not only want to bring you scientists closer to people, but we also want to bring people closer to you scientists. So in our opinion, human exploration and discovery of the unknown, which at the end of the day, it's the main goal of science. It's like a table with 4 legs, let's say. The first one, of course, is researchers. The second one are public administration, that are the main funders of the research done internationally. The third one would be institutions and companies that manage, organize, fund, and promote research, like Arvo or other companies that have big investment on research. And the last one, and often the less considered, is society in general. Both individuals and organizations such as ours, where we think that society should be an actor involved in the process of helping and supporting and boosting this 4-leg table of discovery and exploration that is scientific progress at the end of the day. So in this sense, my question is, how do you think that we can help you in your work, personal and general, as a researcher? We people and we organizations, citizen science organizations that want to contribute to these problems.
Right. First of all, let me congratulate you and thank you for what you've done and what you're doing.
Thank you.
It's a tremendous effort and a tremendous help to those of us who are working in the field, and to the many researchers who are endeavoring in eye and vision research. I think that the first and most important aspect is the education, and desire of people to help in eye and vision research, and in restoring vision to those who have lost it. And it's important that those people with the means to help would make those means available to those who need it. And I think those 2 components, or maybe 3 components, the education aspect, the motivation aspect, and the means, are all necessary in order for society in general to help affect the types of change that you and your organization and Arvo are interested in. And we're grateful that you're taking the course that you are, and that you've been pushing the envelope on making change happen.
Yeah, as you said, it's a tremendous effort, but we are very committed and motivated to it, and at the same time, it's a beautiful project and problem I think we are facing. So that would be all. I finished my coffee already. Thank you. Oh, you talked a lot more than I did, and that's okay. So thank you very much for your time, Joe. That has been a very inspirational and pedagogical cup of coffee together. I hope you the best, and as I said, you can count on us, on the Punt de Vista Foundation, for any needs we could be useful for. And of course, whenever you come to Barcelona, you feel very free to contact us, and we'll share a real cup of coffee, not a Zoom-based one.
Great. Thank you so much, Gabo. I really appreciate it. And again, thank you so much for all you're doing.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye-bye.